Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sophie Weiss, and I am excited to welcome you to our program, Good Leadership, Great Government, Ideas and Strategies for Federal Leaders, brought to you by Cornerstone OnDemand. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the Questions tab located at the bottom of your viewing console. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the program. If you experience any technical difficulties, please click on the Help icon and a member of our support team will assist you. And now, I would like to turn the floor over to Steve Doborowski, Principal in Thought Leadership and Advisory Services at Cornerstone OnDemand.
Thank you, Sophie. Hello, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be talking to you today with Cornerstone and Comptroller of the Currency within the Department of Treasury. I'm very excited to introduce myself, and then I'll turn it over to some of the panelists. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. The little secret is that the three of us, Melissa Duras and David Parks and myself, have all been employees of the Treasury Department at one time or the other. I currently work for Cornerstone, but I've seen some of the great work that Melissa and Dave Parks have done at OCC, or Comptroller of the Currency. Specifically, we've invited them here today to talk to you all about some of the very exciting things that they're using within OCC, within the Treasury Department, to shape their learner experience and their leadership development. In fact, it was so well received, it was awarded Innovation Award through the Training Officers Consortium Group here in Washington, D.C., which is the nonprofit group focused in on training and training officer issues within the government and state and local and federal governments as well. So I would like to start out today and get going. I want to bring in Melissa Duras. Melissa, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Sure. Hi, everybody. As Steve mentioned, this is Melissa Duras at the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, an independent bureau of Treasury. I'm pleased to be here today, and thanks for inviting us, Steve. I have now been at the OCC for a few years. I serve on the OCC Leadership Institute team, where I help design, deliver, implement leadership programs across our enterprise, and I come with about a little over 15 years of federal experience. And I'm also pleased to welcome my colleague here, Dave Parks.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dave Parks, and I've been with the OCC a little bit less time than Melissa. I've been here about 2 years, and I've been with Treasury for about the last 17 years, just at different bureaus. Was with the IRS and then departmental offices, and now I'm with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and also working in the Leadership Institute. And my main focus is on really program evaluation, making sure that we're tracking our programs and getting the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, and just to clarify for all, I'm the program manager for the Continuous Leadership Experience program that we'll talk about today. And so we're excited to share about our experience, and hopefully it can help others in further implementing similar initiatives within the federal government.
That sounds fantastic, both of you. I'm really excited for you to tell us about the programs that you've implemented. This is a webinar that's going to be very reality-based and something that you can take away and implement right off the bat and improve leadership scores and training. So I'm really excited for Melissa and Dave to share their programs. Before they do, I want to maybe set the stage a little bit, right? So in today's world of work, we really have these industrial revolutions going on. According to the World Economic Forum, we're entering into this digital industrial revolution where we're actually seeing increases in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Without going into too many details about each of the generations, one of the common threads from each generation and revolution to the next is that technology has a lot to bear with whether we're in one organization, revolution or another, and that holds true as well. Technology and the rapid pace of change that the technology and new technologies are introducing into the workplace are oftentimes hard to keep up with. I mentioned earlier when I introduced myself that I actually live in Washington, or I didn't mention, but I live in Washington, D.C. and work with the federal government. I go for runs out on the street, and one of the things that I was introduced is to on the street is one of these guys. You know, I have the question up here about any ideas as to what this is, but I saw this as we're running down the street, and it really took me a minute to actually understand what it was. But I don't know if you want to take a guess to yourselves. We don't have a poll question to ask you, but really the secret is that this is an Amazon delivery robot. And I thought I was fascinated by this because I thought of like the changes to the work environment that an Amazon workforce must do, because previous to these technology developments incorporation into their delivery structure, they've never really thought about having staff on that would be able to support this robots and the actual delivery. So it forced me to start thinking that the way we do our work and the way the actual work itself is actually shifting, right? So, and it's based on this technology, and it's ways that we don't really anticipate. Really what we're seeing now is instead of, you know, it would be interesting to see how many of you are actually doing the job that you either went to school for or thought you'd be doing the jobs that you did. I certainly didn't, right? I worked for a software company. I've worked in the federal government. I started out as a high school teacher. But from what each one of those have taught me is that I pick up new skills in each of those organizations and each of those jobs, and those situations give me that idea of how do I carry it on to the next level. And that's what we as learning organizations and in the government or not in the government have to do, right? So skills really have become the new currency in the digital age, right? That driver of how we actually do our work and what it is that the actual work is made up of. So if in the digital age, if skills have become the new currency, then data is the oil that fuels our transactions, right? So that idea that there's really needs to be a focus in on developing skills. So I'd be interested in Melissa, maybe tell us a little bit about, is this true in OCC or what you're seeing on the ground?
Yes, no, what you're saying really resonates, Steve, and constant upskilling is the new currency in the digital age. We all need a workforce that believes it can continuously learn to do their jobs better. And those of us that don't have a growth mindset, we will struggle in the workplace of the future. So continuously broadening our skills, cultivating new ways of thinking, those are critical in helping us adapt to our ever-changing and often ambiguous work environment.
I think that's a really good point. And so taking it a little bit further, you know, this slide is taken from a PwC survey, so you have words like CEOs and that kind of stuff, but you could replace CEO with agency head or directors or, you know, chairman of your organization, your agency, right? So it holds true, right? So people know, leaders know that there's going to be a digital transformation and what they're looking for, according to this survey in PwC, and this is repeated year after year. I think this is taken from 2017, but 2018 also holds true. What the CEOs or the agency leaders are looking for is they're seeking a broader range of skills and solutions when it comes to perspectives and having the right skill set. You know, a lot of times what we're finding in leadership positions that some of the incoming workforce doesn't really actually have the skills that they need, and you know they haven't been faced with it. So it falls on us as learning leaders in our organizations to really to identify that and to tackle that. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Steve, this slide really resonated with me because it's really the primary reason that Melissa and I are here talking with you today and with your audience. In fact, I think OCC began feeling this urgency a few years ago and took action to strengthen its workforce through better recruiting, developing, and retaining of the staff. And this is really what led us to being hired, Melissa and I. As we mentioned, we're both relatively new in the grand scheme of things here, but it was really because of the focus that OCC put on developing its workforce and just wanting to ramp up leadership skills when, you know, technical skills has been the primary focus over the years here. But, you know, I think they're coming to an awareness that leadership skills are more and more important, but also developing the workforce. So if you were to take a look at the OCC website, you'd see our most recent annual plan. It really highlights workforce planning It's a new initiative, and it's something that you've really not seen in any of our past annual reports, that they've highlighted workforce initiatives. But you'll see in there the new workforce planning initiative that really spans from 2017 through 2019, and it's all about identifying the skills and competencies needed for our workforce, both technical and leadership. And you'll also see that they've highlighted leadership, and they've provided special emphasis on the programs that we've got going here at OCC that really strengthen leaders at all levels. One of our kind of cornerstone, no pun intended, Steve, our cornerstone programs is the Leadership Foundations course, which is required for every OCC employee, which is monumental. To put every OCC employee through a 2-day training/workshop to really strengthen those leadership skills is definitely a new direction for this agency. So this slide really resonated with us.
And while we're talking, Dave, I should be full disclosure. A lot of you, if you're paying attention to your screens, have seen that poll question is coming up. And the question reads, do you feel that your talent pool has the level of skills needed to sustain an excellent level of performance? And it's going to be interesting to see the reactions. I'll give it just a few minutes since we called it out to take that poll question, to really click yes, somewhat, or no, and whether or not you feel that your talent pool has the level of skills, the right level of skills needed to sustain the excellent performance. And what we're seeing, though, is, leaders want to increase their headcount, but the majority of the concerns are the availability of key skills. And that's at an 8-year high, right? So really what we're seeing in terms of the polls and the results is it's a pretty much wash between no, they don't have the right level of skills, or they might in terms of somewhat, but not a lot of people. Only 25% of the folks said that yes, they do have the right skill set to perform sustain at the excellent level of performance. So it's really something that holds true. It looks like universally across the board. So that was an interesting result from that poll. So it kind of validates everything that we've said as we were talking. So let's go into, you heard me mention that technology is going to be really rapidly advancing. I mean, how many of you thought that you'd be actually able to do things just by saying, the words, hey Siri, or talk to your Amazon system and have them do things for you by just responding? And 5 years ago, did we really suspect that? No. I mean, let's not forget that in 2009 was the first big year of the iPhone, right? So the ability to do different things with the different technologies have really accelerated. We're seeing things go much, much faster as we're advancing with technology. And that holds true when we talk about managing talent management and developing skills. How we do it over the next 5 years is going to be drastically different than how we do it did it 20 years ago, right? So this is something that's out there, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in government, private sector, banking, healthcare, whatever. Everything is going to have an impact on how we actually manage and develop our talent, right? So this isn't something that we can hide away from, right? It's definitely impacting our capabilities in our private lives with cell phones and technology and that kind of stuff, but it's also now bleeding into the workforce, and it's something that we must address. And organizations that don't address it fall quickly behind and are not in a good spot. So I also think as we start to talk about the changing needs of the workforce in terms of technology and how we're adapting to that, I think it's important that we recognize that in today's working world, again, agnostic of whatever industry that we're talking about, right? So we're seeing this need for continuous lifelong learning, but we want our employees to feel that they're empowered and taking control of their own career. It's not just about employees earning money or earning more money. They really want to focus in on what they want to. They want to give meaning to what they want to do. And this is really true in the public sector when we talk about the contributions towards the mission accomplishment, mission success, right? So it also allows that capability or that functionality to introduce new capabilities with stuff like digital tools that are having an impact on it. You know, Cornerstone is a learning technology system, and we're having an impact, and how we do our work in our organizations changes drastically. So we really need to place teamwork at the heart of whatever organization that we're talking about. We need to adapt to specific needs of our employees as much as humanly possible. We also need to focus in on continuously developing in the way that they actually want to be developed, and making sure that their work has a tangible impact on agency success and mission accomplishment. Melissa, what do you think when you see these slides? Is this something that, you know, sounds great, but it's not really having an impact on the government?
Yeah, no.
What do you think?
I'm thinking, as you're talking through this, about the context in which we work here, and I have a sense that many of you on the phone will be able to relate to this as well. You know, as much as we're living in an increasingly connected world, we can all relate to information overload, left, right, up, and down. You know, we're still challenged with communicating to employees in an effective manner. So, with remote employees, team members on the road, the rise of flex hours, telecommuting, working in satellite offices, all of these traditional methods of working have dramatically changed. So to reach today's on-the-move and geographically dispersed workforce, one that is very well describes the OCC context here, you know, the past styles of communicating through in-office meetings or email blasts, posters, can't do it alone. So Dave, why don't we show everyone a snapshot of what the OCC context looks like?
Sure, Melissa. So I just wanted to share a few sort of basic demographic things and sort of a little bit more about OCC, just to give you a little bit of context if you're not familiar with the agency. But essentially, our mission at OCC is to ensure that the national banks and federal savings associations operate in a safe and sound manner, provide fair access to financial services, treat customers fairly, and comply with applicable laws and regulations. I just read you our mission statement, basically. So the OCC, we charter, we regulate, and we supervise national banks and federal savings associations, and license and supervise federal branches and agencies of foreign banks. And then we also supervise certain third parties that provide services to banks. So interesting fact, we were created under President Abraham Lincoln back in 1863, along with the whole federal banking system through the National Currency Act. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. Speaking to your point on how widely dispersed we are, we have offices in 61 cities nationwide and 141 supervisory operating locations and 4 district offices. So not only do we have people in OCC buildings, but we've got folks stationed in the banks themselves. So the OCC, we also have an office in London that supervises the international activities of national banks, and we have just under 4,000 employees.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, how do we get their attention?
Right, and I think this holds true, right? So it's good to hear OCC is approaching this, and this is where I want to start making it more relevant to learning and development, and specifically some of the programs, the program that you guys have deployed at OCC. Taking into context everything that we've said so far, now let's set up OCC and the program that you actually are deploying, and really how I think you guys came to it really aligns with some of the things that learners need, right? So we want to be able to find what we're looking for all at once, just like when we want to consumerize. Think of stuff like Netflix and playlists. We want it just in the amount of time and it just for me. Think about how many times you've gone to YouTube and looked at videos, searched for something, and then decided whether you're going to watch it based on the length of time of the video, right? I've been there, I'm raising my hand. But I've also wanted to, instead of being talked at, I wanted to collaborate with some of my peers. We want that peer collaboration, the social networking component. But the other thing is, it's a recognition now, and with today's changing technologies, that all learning that we do is not necessarily going to take place in our learning management system. And, you know, it begins to really highlight that idea of informal learning becoming a really big component of any sort of learning strategy. But, you know, the thing, when I mention all those factors, the thing that I really want to kind of highlight is something that Burson did a number, well, it was 2017, and they looked at like a snapshot when we talked about the modern learner and who is the modern learner. You know, I think Melissa and Dave, you guys are going to actually talk about some of this and how you overcame some of these obstacles, right? Our learners are overwhelmed. I think the majority of people spend about 25% of their work time just responding and interacting with email, right? So they're distracted. Many things trying to compete for their attention. And oh, by the way, they're impatient. So if you don't get it right away, you lost their attention. You know, they don't want to be behind necessarily a computer. They want it in multiple modalities. They want it when they want it. They want to be able to collaborate with my teammates and colleagues. And they want to be able to say that I'm the one that controls this, and I am the one that decides which path I want to take, not necessarily top down and we're pushing stuff out, but I want to be able to consume it in the manner that I want, right? So this, I think, really speaks to the power of what you guys have done at OCC with some of those programs. Why don't you talk a little bit more about, Melissa, about the why, and then I'd really like for you guys to start showing some components of the continuous leadership experience.
Yeah, so we all know that effective learning and talent development, it's continuous, it's iterative, it's personalized, and it also, for us adults, you know, has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to my world. So it's shifted a modality from classroom training only to more informal and micro-learning. This could put tremendous pressure on our L&D profession. We're charged with learning strategies, but we're also asked to place learning in the employee's hands and to personalize it. So that can be a little daunting. You know, how can we help? What can we do as an L&D profession? So here, looking at both of the columns on the screen, all the todays imply a change. Some are huge changes in strategy, some are a mindset shift, but this all really lays the groundwork for launching OCC's CLX program, you know, where we leverage the microlearning approach. Steve, if I go back, you know, to the Burson modern learner that you showed, you know, we can all understand why microlearning has been such a buzz the last several years. It truly leverages cognitive science behind how we learn and retain content, especially when we're bombarded with all of that information from all angles. With all of that information coming our way, you know, how can we best retain what's most relevant? So forgetting depends on many factors, and what we found is that the research shows, on average, we forget 70% of what we learn within 24 hours of a learning experience. And this is what's referred to as the forgetting curve. So that was really impactful for me as we were looking at the why behind establishing such a program like CLX, leveraging a microlearning approach. Information is just lost over a period of time when there's no attempt for us to retain it. So spaced over time, this natural forgetting curve is cut by half. So as we go into introducing the CLX reactivates core business or leadership strategies and principles, you know, that are learned in our OCC classrooms or in other forums, serving as mini boosters to help reshape that forgetting curve. And this approach helps people retain, again, more of what they've learned.
All right, let's unveil the program. Let's lift the hood and start showing them under it.
All right, we're ready.
So this is the award-winning program, right?
Yeah, it's been a really big rush here at the OCC. The CLX, you know, it plays a vital role in leadership development at the OCC, and really it's meant to complement traditional learning with this micro-learning approach. And so what I'd like to do, Steve, I'll just start with a quick high-level overview about our program. And as Dave mentioned, you know, after developing a leadership, well, the OCC has become more self-aware, first of all, in the last several years. Our focus have been on the technical competencies, still very important, but we have found that there really needs to be a shift. And there has been, we've put into place, along with establishing the OCC Leadership Institute, which Dave and I are now a part of, we've developed a leadership competency model for leaders at all levels that map competencies to our internal and very robust leadership curriculum. We also developed a formal leadership and career development policy, and what that really did was institutionalize a systematic approach to how we develop our leaders. And so here on this slide, we just mention, again, the why behind CLX. Well, this program, these monthly editions align to OCC's latest initiatives, our guidance, our priorities. Basically, it aligns to what we're talking about, what's most relevant at OCC right now. It reinforces that robust leadership curriculum, the formal classroom-based classes that are built on our competency framework. We have one-click access to highly curated, and curated, is a key term here, book summaries, videos, periodicals with top leadership experts, and in some, it just empowers our audience, providing them flexibility with an innovative, flexible calendar approach where when they choose to access CLX, that is up to them. And so, Dave, why don't you provide a brief summary of, these key points?
Sure. So, on this slide, I think this just sort of boils it down to what are the main things behind the continuous leadership experience. So the first thing there, it supports leadership training. So CLX delivers quick strategies, tactics, and perspectives from top business leaders, experts, focused around a specific leadership topic each month, and it's intended to be consumed in less than 30 minutes a month. So it respects people's time. It's with the busy professional in mind. The CLX is accessed and reviewed when the timing works for the individual. So they have the ability to shift this to a time that really works for them. And we'll get into some of the details around how we actually send it out. But it's easy access. That's the other thing that is really key here. We want to make it super, super easy for managers and employees to get a hold of this content. We don't want them having to log in to, use 5 different logins and clicks just to get to one spot, so to get to where they need to go. So we made it really, really easy for them, and you can even, make it so that you can access it on any device. So,
and Dave, let's not forget, it provides another means to meet those mandatory leadership training requirements.
Yeah, you got to check the block, right?
Yeah.
I think we're all raised with that mindset as we go to school and go through college. It's what's next on that curriculum. We need to just check
I'm sure that a lot of folks on the line would say that it's really easy to kind of make the mandatory leading or leadership training or whatever mandatory training you actually have to accomplish. It's also a lot easier to do technical training because that's kind of why organizations exist, right? To do something technical. That softer skill of leadership and leadership development, tell us, how did you guys actually design your approach to this? What were some of the talking things that you guys actually have said?
Well, like Dave mentioned, again, we have employees all across the nation, and they are highly mobile. So the overall design really meets the needs of this highly mobile and multi-generational workforce that we have, where flexibility in where and how we learn is increasingly important. So dedicating these smaller blocks of time for focused topics helps with the learning retention. It keeps it on top of mind, but it also allows our folks to immediately implement skills and strategies. And a specific example just comes to mind where I actually had a manager reach out to me after having just left the meeting. She had opened up the CLX edition and had just listened to one of our leadership experts and read, it was less than a one-page article on that topic of, I believe it was strategic thinking. Went into a meeting, she was able to immediately recall and apply what she had just learned and share it in her meeting. And so that is exactly what we're talking about, in that we're providing just short, chunks of information on a specific topic so that folks can then walk away and actually recall and apply what they just learned on the job, which what I like to refer to as the greatest learning lab is right on the job.
Well, so as I mentioned in the beginning, I worked at IRS in Treasury, and I was responsible for the formal leadership development program and succession planning program. I guess my question would be, and knowing how intensive leadership development programs can often be, does this replace any parts of your formal leadership development program? Does it supplement it? How does it blend with that?
Good question, Steve. And we actually had some of our employees, ask that question when we first rolled this out. And the answer is a firm no. We have a robust leadership curriculum, and formal training is still critical. We're not taking that away. We are further empowering our employees, particularly when they are out of the classroom, by providing this framework where they can take responsibility for learning continuously and learning autonomously, on their own. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'd like to hear more, but yeah, there you go. Let's talk about the audience, Dave. Who are really the people that are doing this training? I mean, you mentioned that it's all manager, but what are you seeing across the board in terms of the audience for CLX?
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of background and just sort of our journey as we went through this experience, put this program together. So we took a phased approach, and as you can see on the slide, to answer your question right there, it's really, the primary target audience was managers, but like I said, we took a phased approach, and it started as a program targeting our manager cadre, but then, and we launched it as a 6-month pilot for about 80 participants, including a number of non-supervisors as well. And just after 3 months, we decided, you know what, let's go ahead and let's expand this. We're getting a great response from our managers and the non-supervisors that were part of the pilot. And so we broadened it, from that point on, just after 3 months. And, we haven't turned back since. I think we're on our 7th issue now.
Yeah, we're on our 7th issue. It was interesting, Steve, during the pilot audience kept getting larger and larger as word got around. People wanted to be added to the CLX list and wanted to learn about it. So as Dave mentioned, we thought, well, we're not going to keep this going for another 3 months. At 3 months, let's just stop the pilot, collect some feedback, make updates, and we introduced the CLX then to all managers just this past January.
So let me just talk a little bit, too, about the actual way we deliver this. So we send it out with what we call a flexible calendar approach. So we send out monthly calendar invitations that we deliver directly to the managers. Melissa sends those out from her own mailbox. And there's instructions included there with them to, they can move the calendar invite to a time that's convenient for themselves. So, we all know that we live in our calendars, right? So those reminders are just really helpful, I think, to everybody to just keep on task. So having it there in your calendar really provides that mechanism so that you can, it doesn't fall off your radar and you don't forget about it. So once we launched the CLX to all managers, like we said, we focused on our next phase. The OCC Leadership Institute, we also developed an internal site because we wanted to broaden it to all employees, really. So we put all of the CLX editions out on this intranet page so that all of our employees can access them, and then we follow it up with we have a monthly communication mechanism here at OCC called What's New. It's actually weekly. And so every month we'll make sure that we get the latest topic into those communications so that all employees are aware of what the next CLX edition talks about.
Yeah. And just to clarify, and I feel like we're holding everybody in suspense because next up we're actually going to show you what one of these editions, what CLX looks like. But just to clarify, we did take a two-pronged approach because we know with our busy professionals, what's important is in the calendar. And so for all of our managers, they do receive, we send it out once a month, they get a PDF of the CLX in their calendar, and then at the same time, concurrently, we we save the PDF on our internal site, and so at any point, anybody, to include our whole workforce, can go to the CLX page and open up or refer to previous editions, each CLX, by leadership topic. And so if you get it in, if you get a CLX in your calendar and you want to go back and think, oh, 3 editions ago, I remember getting something about coaching and feedback, so that one doesn't have to dig through their calendar. It's all there, on the site.
Sounds like you guys were very deliberate about how you designed it, and so some of those obstacles that we think when we talk about dealing with very busy people, you've kind of been very thoughtful on reducing the obstacles and making it frictionless for folks to actually consume the content.
Yeah.
We're starting to see it now, right?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Dave mentioned that flexible calendar approach. We really had to work on communicating that and telling people, no, really, it's up to you. You can move it. I think folks, at least in our environment, are very much used to having a very formal approach, a certain time, just very linear fashion. So that whole approach and the feedback that we've gotten, unanticipated, they love that notion, although we all know that's available to us at all times. It's just really making that a habit and making sure that you're moving time for your self-development within a window that works for you.
Right. So why don't we go ahead and take a look then at what's under the hood here. So if you take a look at your screen, you'll see this is really the format for the continuous leadership experience. So this is what one of our monthly editions looks like. So the structure here is there's different sections. It's really quite simple. I mean, it begins with a quote, something that's really meaningful to sort of catch interest there, related data research that's really on the topic of interest. So you can see this one here is mentoring and inspiring. So each month we pick a different topic, and the next section has our what we call the assets, or the learning interventions. So you've got some videos here. You can see there's 3 videos, and then they're very short. I mean, they're 2 to 4 minutes typically, and then you have a Harvard Business Review article there. We often also include books or book summaries, short reads, really, book summaries mostly. There's also that section there called Reflect, Apply, and Practice, which is where we really are trying to get the learners to apply what they've learned. Oftentimes these include exercises that a manager could work on either individually or with their teams.
And the key, again, is short exercise, and we're very deliberate about offering up a specific strategy, or, for example, in that section, offering up 3 key skills or strategies that they just learned about in one of the 2 to 4 minute videos. We ask them, we say, choose one, choose one and implement it within the next 30 days.
Right.
And that's been really powerful too here and effective.
Yes. And then finally at the bottom, you can see we have the want more section where you can continue the journey. So I think we have over 15 different courses that we offer here just internally with our own instructors and vendor-led courses. And then, there's just a myriad of different learning options available to folks that we feature in this little section. Sometimes we'll include videos that we put together internally from our leaders telling their leadership stories. So there's all sorts of things that we put there in the end. It could even link to an online course that really takes you deeper into a specific topic.
But the key is that that section is saved for aligning that particular leadership topic of the month to our internal resources. So it helps drive folks to specific resources that we already have available, but again, with information overload, they may not know about it, and so again, provide the resources that are relevant to just that specific topic of the month. And that's a key point. The CLX really mainly leverages existing resources already here at the OCC, so we're maximizing efficiencies. So again, for example, those short videos in 2 to 4 minutes is key, no more than that, at least for our audience, and book summaries that are already available in the agency LMS. The publications, articles, data, for example, from Harvard Business Review or Wall Street Journal, OCC has subscriptions to those publications. But again, with information overload, folks wouldn't necessarily go there. We pick a very short, and I'll keep saying that, but it has to be short, concise, like no more than one-page article that also has very practical, specific strategies that one can implement, immediately. And so we're driving folks to internal resources. Within the last year, OCC developed a new engagement resource, portal, toolkit. Again, there's so much information being thrown at our employees. CLX has been such a wonderful way for this example that you see in front of you, the topic being motivating and inspiring. Down at the bottom, we were able to drive folks to 2 specific resources as part of that engagement portal.
Right.
So they're getting this in slow drips, and it's just what they need when they need it. And, by the way, this topic, motivating and inspiring, we shared it during a month where there was a lot of messaging coming from our senior executive cadre about how, overall engagement is a critical part of our overall strategic plan. Again, it's just reinforcing some of the messaging and the initiatives that one is hearing about within their from their leadership.
Oh, I think we jumped a slide. Did you want to show us what the actual, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this slide, really, this slide is a screenshot of our intranet page where we post all of the CLX editions. We just want to make it easy for folks to get to archived issues that they may have missed or they want to get back to as that reminder at key points during the year. For example, performance management time. You might want to go back and take a look at the coaching and feedback issues. So there they are. Also in our portal, our LMS, we've got a folder set up, so as soon as you log in, they're front and center right there for you. And we also just want to point out that we were very deliberate in ensuring that everything we put out there, whether it's a Wall Street Journal article or whatever the asset may be, we're actually linking it through the learning management system as a content object there, so that we can go back and we can very easily, all in one spot, just get that data and see who's really accessing and if we're getting the kind of penetration into the workforce that we're looking for.
So I guess one of the questions that I have is, when we talk about short attention spans and increasing pressures to do more with less, sounds like you guys have made learning and customized, right? So short, consumable, at time of need, very easy to access. When we actually talk about like the content and what's in it, what's your approach to that in terms of content, and how much time do you spend on energy creating the thing? How do you determine what's next?
To be honest, most of our energy is focused on just that, because with the reality of information overload, we have to ensure that the content, not the leadership topics, are meaningful to an OCC employee, not just any, a general employee. So we've been very deliberate about that, and that's the example that I just shared, again, about motivating and inspiring when we shared CLX that month. Well, it was just reinforcing what they were already hearing from various other emails, from leadership messages. So I definitely, that's a key. And that makes it just-in-time learning as well. So CLX, it helps connect the dots. We know that leadership, performance management practices, engagement, it's all about what we do. And again, CLX reinforces those behaviors like a continuous flow drip over time.
So you'll notice there at the bottom of the slide, we've got a quote, and it says that organizations that reinforce the knowledge and skills learned during training. With accountability and support systems, can expect as much as 85% application on the job. Conversely, companies that rely primarily on training events alone to create good job performance achieve around a 15% success rate. So I just really wanted to drive that point home by reading that quote, because it is so important. We have all of these great courses, but you go and you spend 2-3 days in a course, but then you quickly forget that as soon as you walk out the door oftentimes. So we want to make sure that we're reinforcing these points. So we have to put support systems in place to really make sure that people these messages are being reinforced throughout the organization. So on this slide, just wanted to share a couple of mechanisms that we've put in place to ensure that really people are following up on their learning with all of our courses. So on the left, you have a screenshot of our dashboard. So we have quarterly review meetings. We actually have at OCC a leadership development advisory board that we get together with monthly, and once a quarter we focus in on metrics, and we look through each of our key programs, mainly looking at output metrics since it's a quarterly kind of meeting, but these are all things that are pointing towards the outcomes that we're looking for ultimately. But you'll see there's a couple of metrics on there. I don't know if you can read that, but one of them for the CLX is just simply, are we getting a lot of new managers engaged with the program? So distinct users. We want to see an uptick with every edition. We'd like to see a few new managers joining in. So the other thing we're looking there for is the monthly returns to the content. How many people are we averaging that are going back each month and looking at the CLX. So those are a couple of really key metrics that we're always looking for an increase in, and we've really involved our Leadership Development Advisory Board, who are key champions. They're pretty high-level folks throughout our organization, our lines of business, that we've actually on the right, we've given them a tool that they can use to go and take a look and see, and this is just this one's focused on the continuous leadership experience. We have similar dashboards for other leadership programs, but they can go in and drill into their own organization, and they can see, where it's picking up, where it needs some more attention, and they can help drive and promote those programs. So we really want to make sure that the organization as a whole is supporting the leadership principles, and it's not just coming from the Leadership Institute.
So it's manage what you measure, but also measure what you manage, and taking steps to intervene if you see low percentage or low saturation, or you call it penetration. Yeah. So what's been some of the feedback that you guys actually have had?
Yeah. So if you'll take a look at this slide, you'll see these three numbers here. So 87% of respondents indicated CLX strengthened their leadership effectiveness. So this was after our pilot. We did a survey to all of our participants. We had a pretty good, I can't remember the exact response rate, very high, very good response rate, but 90% of respondents would recommend CLX to their OCC colleagues, and then 83% reinforced a familiar leadership topic to better perform their job, gain deeper knowledge on a topic, and new skills, improving their ability to lead. So all really good numbers there. Also wanted to include a few testimonials. You can see on your screen this person was able to work around their various board meetings and meetings with the banks and accomplish everything that was on there because they had the ability to do that, the flexible calendar approach. The second one there, reinforce principles we should all be incorporating. Yes, that person gets it, A great tool to positively enhance our culture, reinforce the leadership concepts, timely content. So speaking to what Melissa was talking about, performance management season's coming around. I mean, we're in the thick of it now. So it's just a great just-in-time mechanism for folks.
We talk about coaching and feedback.
Coaching and feedback, exactly. And then, this next one made the person more mindful of their role. So, I mean, that's the thing about the leadership principles, right? So a lot of them are intuitive, but how easy is it to forget them? So you need them like front and center. And then the last one there, reinforce the messages. So, I mean, people are getting that concept, really, that this really enforces things that they're learning.
Yeah.
Some very positive feedback.
Thank you. And with that positive feedback, we were also very deliberate about closing the feedback loop with all of those pilot participants. So what we did was we shared that back out with them. We wanted them to know the testimonials that they provided, what worked, and what we did was we engaged them in the process, in the initial rollout of, the formal rollout when we opened access to all OCC managers across the enterprise. And so a lot of it was word of mouth from them as well. We shared those testimonials leading up to the launch. And what Dave and I did here was we just listed a few tips, perhaps that could be valuable for other agencies in how to get started, utilizing some of the lessons learned from this particular program. Dave and I mentioned specifically how we had some executive champions. Well, we identified and partnered with our stakeholders, up front from the beginning, and we started with the why. On our CLX page, again, we started with the why, and that goes back to earlier in our presentation when, how we align everything to our strategic plan, to the curriculum we already have, the competency framework. We partnered and provided regular updates to all of our stakeholders from the beginning. So one can look at that as socializing CLX over time. Of course, we faced barriers. And so what we did was we acknowledged those barriers. I brought in decision makers that could confirm with certainty what was technically possible with initially implementing CLX, so that we could actually understand true versus perceived barriers and then look at where the opportunities exist. So we learned that remaining curious, as you're talking with various stakeholders, and perhaps even dissenting at times, can help push, towards innovation and to start a new program. As far as the pilot program, the key thing to remember there is just to close the feedback loop after the evaluations and use those folks as your program advocates. And lastly, just being strategic with the communication, creating the why, using those testimonials that you have, and making it easy for your sponsors and for those other champions to talk about the program. We would provide short, talking points so that, again, it's not just coming from the L&D side.
Awesome. So your pilot really impacted the way you actually rolled this out then, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that was really critical.
Yeah, we highly recommend a pilot if you're going to go down this road.
It helps build that momentum. It builds your advocates. Success breeds success. So we started small, and it took off on its own from then. Really focus on building desire, from the outset. Like I said, we shared teaser emails that would explain, bits and pieces of the CLX program up until we officially launched the whole thing. Like I said, folks were coming to us during the pilot, and so that was a really cool learning experience for us. That was the first time we really took that approach, the deliberate focus on that. And what I would say, Steve, is just
well, one of the things I would actually like to do is I'd like to ask the audience if we could put the poll question up on this one. So we've talked a lot about the program, and I don't know if we have the poll question up. I can't see, but what are some of the initiatives that they've actually had and focused in on? I guess we're getting short of time, so we're going to go right into the next slide. If we could just talk about when we start talking about what it is we're doing, the fact that this is from the World Economic Forum again, so what we're actually doing, some of those skills and things that you're doing in CLX, what topics you're actually selecting are going to have a growing difference when we start talking about the actual topics, right? We're going to start to see technology replace some of the manual things that we often do on our jobs, but some of the skills that we're going to have to grow in our organizations are some of the things that are on the left-hand side. It sounds like you guys are deliberate about doing this with your CLX program, so it actually gets you the organization and the structure that you're looking for, but it's addressing the changing workforce and addressing the skill economy and how that's actually having an impact on your workforce. So it sounds very powerful in terms of your approach and your organization. One final thing that I'd like to leave, and then I think I have a question from the audience to ask you guys. This, in typical fashion, we often see that organizations and departments, OCC, for example, fits into the overall big treasury and we must go into a siloed approach. But what we're seeing with this is it's actually making our way we do our talent as owned by all, to consider the experience, to have experts and be able to leverage those experts across the boards, relying on social collaboration when it comes to teams and then platforms to do it, right? So it sounds like you guys have had a comprehensive approach to doing that. One of the things that I would like to maybe ask you, Melissa and Dave, is if you could give yourself advice, the pre-CLX Melissa and Dave's, what advice would you give to the pre-CLX Melissa and Dave's, so other people who might be considering it, some of the obstacles that they're going to face or some battles that they're going to have, what would you say that you need to do that?
What really comes to mind for me, and then we'll see what Dave might add, is that I didn't mention that it took a full year of, a full year of socializing CLX, and particularly partnering on the implementations, the technical aspect of this, of how do we implement this. We faced a lot of pushback. We were asking to kind of change the status quo, with the technology aspect. And so that with implementation, what I wish I had known a year early was to really articulate the vision, what we saw CLX looking like on the other side. I feel like a year later, I started to, again, really focus on the why behind CLX, again, the microlearning, why it is critical to have one-click access to the content, how we can partner together with the IT and the LMS teams to meet the needs from the user perspective. I just found that I kept repeating, the why, the vision, and brought them into that, and I was very intentional. You mentioned that we won an award recognition for this. That's been great. I went back to each of our stakeholders, particularly with our IT teams, and thanked them because I wanted to share that success with them so that we can continue to partner and work through some of those barriers. It's not always an easy implementation. But so that's what I would say is know what your why is and what the vision is, and make sure you articulate that with all of the stakeholders that you need to collaborate with. What would you?
So Melissa, while you were talking on that, the question of where do you see the greatest need for staff development within your organization, the poll question came up, and we're seeing the results are split between continuous learning and development and leadership development, which I think validates what you've said in this session today. Dave, what sort of advice do you have? And then we're going to have to close out the webinar. I think we could talk pretty much all day about this type of stuff. But Dave, what do you have to add to that?
I would just echo what Melissa said about the technical. I would say that we actually involved IT from day one, and they were very good about working with us. So just don't underestimate, I think, the challenges you may run up against there. I mean, we were adamant that we had to have, because our solution here, we just needed that one-click access, which meant we had to stand up a separate portal. but we pushed that, and finally that worked out. And then what's been a little disappointing is that we still have yet to cross that bridge to get to the mobile access. But we're keeping at it, and we think we're going to get there.
Right.
We're going to get there.
Well,
there was a lot of others in the queue ahead of us to get apps and mobile enabled. So go ahead, Steve.
You've already broken a lot of barriers. It sounds like you're going to continue to push through. You've already proven that HR and IT can get along and accomplish something when they work together.
It's a great relationship, really. It's just
yeah, awesome.
Sometimes it's a little bit of a waiting game, but pushing at the same time.
Dave and Melissa, I really want to thank you. It's very refreshing and exciting to see such an innovative program in the government and really advancing the cause. So I want to thank you for talking with us about it today. And I believe I'm going to ask that Sophie, who introduced us, take us out to a close. Again, thank you everyone for attending. And Sophie?
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Steve, Melissa, and Dave, for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. The full webcast has been recorded, and you will receive a link to watch it again in your email inbox later this week. Keep an eye out and feel free to pass it along to your colleagues. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next time.